In the bustling heart of Lagos, where the air hummed with the chaos of downfall buses and the chatter of market women, Adana Okeke walked through the crowded streets of Yoba. At 28, she carried herself with a quiet strength, her dark eyes sharp and her steps deliberate. She was a graphic designer, freelancing for tech startups in the city's growing digital hub. Her life was a mosaic of deadlines, coffee shops, and the vibrant pulse of Lagos, but beneath it all lay a hollow space, a wound that had never quite healed. Adana's father, Obi Okeke, had left when she was 6. She remembered him in fragments, the deep rumble of his laugh, the way he'd lift her onto his shoulders to watch the Egungun festival dancers, the scent of his cologne mixed with engine oil from his mechanic shop. Then one day, he was gone. No explanation, no goodbye, just a void where her father used to be. Her mother, Chizim, had raised her alone in their small flat in Suralere, working long hours as a nurse to keep them afloat. When Adana asked about her father, Chizim's face would tighten, and she'd say, "He made his choice, Adana. We make ours." Now, as Adana sat in a noisy buka, spooning oha soup over pounded yam, her phone buzzed. An email from an unknown sender, obiokeke@gmail.com, her heart skipped. She hadn't heard that name in years, yet it was etched into her memory like a scar. The subject line read, "My daughter, I am sorry." She stared at the screen, her food forgotten. The email was short but heavy with regret. Obi wrote that he was back in Nigeria after years abroad, living in Port Harcourt. He wanted to see her, to explain, to make things right. He included his phone number and an address. Adana's fingers trembled as she closed the email. Part of her wanted to delete it, to bury the past again. But another part, the part that still remembered her father's laughter, wondered what had driven him away. Adana spent weeks wrestling with the decision. She confided in her best friend, Tolu, over drinks at a rooftop bar in Victoria Island. Tolu, ever the pragmatist, leaned back in her chair, her braids catching the neon lights. "What's the worst that can happen?" she asked. "You meet him, and he's still a disappointment. Or you don't, and you spend the rest of your life wondering. Go, Adana. You're stronger than you think." So, Adana booked a bus ticket to Port Harcourt. The journey was long, the road winding through dense forest and past roadside villages where hawkers sold roasted corn and bottled water. She stared out the window, her thoughts a tangle of anger and curiosity. What could he say to justify 22 years of silence? Did she even want to hear it? Port Harcourt greeted her with its humid air and the faint smell of crude oil. Obi's address led her to a modest bungalow in Rumuala, its walls painted a faded yellow. She stood at the gate, her heart pounding. Before she could knock, the door opened, and there he was, older, grayer, but unmistakably her father. His eyes widened, and for a moment, they stood frozen, two strangers bound by blood and time. "Adana," he said, his voice thick. "You came." They sat in the living room, the hum of a ceiling fan filling the awkward silence. Obi offered her a bottle of Martina, and she took it, more out of politeness than thirst. He looked smaller than she remembered, his broad shoulders now slightly stooped, his hands callous but trembling as he spoke. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he began. "But I owe you the truth." He told her about the early days of his marriage to Chizim, how his mechanic business had struggled, how debts had piled up. A friend had offered him a job in South Africa, a chance to start over. "I thought I'd go, make money, and come back for you both," he said. "But life, it traps you. I got caught in a cycle, work, survival, shame. Every year, it got harder to face you." Adana listened, her emotions a storm. She wanted to scream at him, to ask why he hadn't tried harder, why he hadn't called. But she also saw the pain in his eyes, the weight of his choices. "You left me," she said finally, her voice low but steady. I grew up thinking I wasn't enough. Obi's face crumpled. You were always enough, Adana. I was the one who wasn't. Adana didn't stay long that first visit. She needed time to process, to decide if she could let him back into her life. Over the next few months, they began to talk, tentative phone calls, then longer conversations. Obi shared stories of his life in South Africa, the loneliness, the regret. Adana told him about her art, her dreams, the woman she'd become despite his absence. One weekend, she invited him to Lagos. They walked through Balegan Market, the chaos of traders and shoppers, a strange backdrop to their fragile reconnection. Obi pointed out a store selling brightly colored ashok fabric. Your mother loved this kind, he said softly. Adana nodded, a lump in her throat. She hadn't told him that Chisholm had passed away 2 years earlier, a secret she wasn't ready to share. They attended a local Fuji music concert that evening, the rhythms of King Sunny Ode filling the air. For the first time, Adana saw her father smile, his shoulders swaying to the beat. She felt a spark of the joy she'd known as a child, but it was tempered by the years between them. A year later, Adana invited Obi to her hometown in Anambra for the New Yam Festival. It was a bold step, bringing him back to the place where their family had once been whole. The village was alive with color, masquerades dancing, women cooking pots of yam porridge, children laughing. Obi helped with the preparations, his hands steady as he peeled yams alongside Adana's cousins. During the festival, Adana finally told him about Chisholm's death. They sat under a mango tree, the air thick with the scent of roasted yam. Obi wept, his grief raw and unguarded. I failed her too, he said. Adana took his hand, her own tears falling. You're here now, she whispered. Let's start from here. The road to reunion was not smooth. There were days when Adana's anger resurfaced, when Obi's guilt made him withdraw. But they kept trying. He visited her in Lagos, marveling at her design portfolio. She traveled to Port Harcourt, learning about the man her father had become, a mechanic again, running a small workshop, teaching young apprentices. One evening, as they shared a meal of jollof rice and fried plantain, Obi gave her a small wooden carving of an egret, her favorite bird. I made this for you, he said. I want you to know I'm not going anywhere this time. Adana held the carving, its smooth edges grounding her. She didn't have all the answers, and the pain of the past hadn't vanished. But as she looked at her father, she saw not just the man who'd left, but the one who'd come back. And for now, that was enough.